nonprofit organizations, consulting. And before joining WRI, Karl was vice president of ICF Consulting from 2007 to 2013. He previously served as Deputy Secretary Administrator at the EPA's Policy Office and Chief Economist for the State Energy and Natural Resources Committee. In 1999, which was before the turn of the century, he was visiting fellow at the Tata Energy Research Center Institute in New Delhi, and he currently serves on EPRI's Advisory Council, and EPRI is the Electric Policy Research Institute. He holds a master's in public policy and PhD in public policy from Berkeley and a BA in economics from Cornell. So you can see that he is very qualified to speak with us today, and I'll hand it over to you, Karl.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Great to be here, folks. And as you can see, the title of my talk is The Team Approach to Reliable, Affordable Grids. What am I going to talk about today? Going to remind us all what interesting times we live in, particularly in the power sector, and talk about the goals we share for our grids, reliable and affordable grids clearly, and then clean grids. There's, of course, some difference of opinion there, what that means or what we should be pursuing. And I'm going to contrast sort of the opposition to expanded renewables versus the support for 100% renewable grids, which you still hear from some quarters. We're going to explore that narrative of, renewables are the cheapest and talk specifically about the role of the levelized cost of electricity, or LCOE, in that narrative. And I think you're going to hear something a little different than you often hear from the NGO world. I'm going to move then to the arguments that how we really need a team of technologies that includes solar, wind, but also fossil and nuclear, and almost everything in the kitchen sink we need to throw at the power grid to meet the rising demand we are now seeing. I'll give an example from Texas on how they're integrating renewables, and conclude with some discussion of the key role of what we call integration costs for solar and wind, and the path forward from here. I have web links throughout my deck. You'll have a PDF of it available to do deeper dives on anything, along with some bonus materials in the appendix. So let's get started. As we all know, electricity demand is surging, and it's not just AI and data centers, which maybe are 55% or so of what's happening, but we also have the reshoring of manufacturing in the US. We have electric vehicle sales continue to grow. At the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty over how much demand growth we're going to see, how much AI, which makes utility planning difficult. There is a broad consensus, I think, that the US should aim to win the AI race, a very broad consensus that we should keep electricity reliable and affordable as we meet that demand growth. On the other hand, on that third goal of having a clean grid, we can all acknowledge there's polarization on that issue. The Trump administration has certain views and policies on climate and clean energy. In contrast, there are a lot of policymakers and stakeholders who support a continued path of decreasing CO2 emissions from the electricity sector. And I should note that utilities and industry in general are taking the long view on climate change, which personally I think is a good idea. But the good news that I want to convince you all of is that the best near-term actions on how to expand our grids reliably and affordably is pretty much the same path regardless of one's views on climate change. I find that encouraging. The Trump administration policy on climate and renewables is pretty clear. What has happened legislatively in terms of a quick phase out of solar and wind subsidies, a bunch of executive actions affecting the siting of solar and wind, and all kind of wrapped up in the president's view that wind and solar power are the scam of the century. I do disagree, but people can differ on that. At the other end of the spectrum, there are still some NGOs and academics that support the idea of having a 100% renewable grid. Some authors here like Jacobson out at Stanford, NGOs like Greenpeace and Environment America still envision some massive expansion of solar and wind and batteries, maybe some roles for hydro or geothermal bioenergy, can somehow provide all the power we need reliably. Their advocacy, of course, excludes nuclear or fossil fuel, even with carbon capture on it. And again, I respectfully disagree that this is a good path. Um, but I think it's good for all of us to know sort of the basics of the answer to the question, why not 100% renewable grids? You'll have probably seen graphs like this. This is from a New York Times article a little while ago that shows a very steep decrease in the cost of solar over the last 15 years or so, and as well as wind, getting down into the $50, $60 a megawatt hour. And this cost decrease is real, and this is why solar and wind, in my view, can play an important role in expanding grids in the future. But there is nuance here and important details to master. Um, what the full graph of the New York Times shows is the solar and wind cost of electricity compared to nuclear, coal, and gas, and concluding, like many do, looking at these types of graphs, that solar and wind are the least expensive new source, which sort of begs the question, then why would you build anything else if solar and wind are now cheapest? However, there is a problem, deep problem in that argument. And it comes down to the fact that all of this narrative that, renewables are cheapest, end of story, depends on a measure of cost called levelized cost of energy, or more specifically, levelized cost of electricity. And I'm going to hope to convince you today that all credible experts acknowledge that this measure of cost is simplistic and it risks comparing apples to oranges. Just to geek out a little bit on why that is, I'm going to briefly explain what LCOE is. It aims to be a metric of the average cost per megawatt hour of a power plant, but a power plant sort of standing alone in isolation, not really connected to the grid. What it does is sum all the costs over the lifetime of the power plant, investment costs, operation and maintenance, and fuel stretching out over 20, 30, 40 years, take the present value of that, and then divide it by all the megawatt hours produced over the lifetime. Kind of sounds reasonable. You divide cost by quantity, present value basis, you get an average cost. However, there's a problem, because that denominator of taking the simple sum of annual megawatt hours takes no account of the value of the megawatt hours generated. It treats every megawatt hour identically, when the value of a megawatt hour varies tremendously depending on the time of day it's produced, where it's produced on the grid, congestion, no congestion, and even the season of the year. As those of you familiar with grids know, all megawatt hours are not created equal. So that's the problem with this. And this is well recognized, and it's important to cite a source like the National Renewable Energy Lab here with a study just a couple years back on how LCOE should be used. They say it's appropriate to track the cost and performance of a single technology over time. That's what that New York Times chart did 2 slides ago, showing solar decreasing, again, comparing solar on solar over the years. Or you can compare technologies that operate similarly and that provide primarily energy services, i.e., just cranking out megawatt hours. But the flip side of that, of course, is don't compare technologies that don't operate similarly and provide a wide range of reliability services to the grid. Black start capability, spinning reserves, voltage control, etc., where different power plants provide very different qualities and value of megawatt hours. But sadly, in my mind, what happens is often outfits like Lazard will do exactly what NREL says don't do. They just throw all sorts of LCOE numbers on a single graph like this from last year: solar PV, geothermal, wind with storage, gas peaking plants, nuclear, coal, gas combined cycle. Throw all of the levelized cost of energy numbers on one chart, and with some large ranges here too, and conclude that renewables remain cost effective with conventional generating technology, or even cheaper in many cases. This is a misuse, in my view, of LCOE. And what we should do is stop asking what is the cheapest source of electricity, and instead ask what is the best team of sources to reach our goals. We're going to put a team together of some expensive plants that run just a couple hours a year, like peaking plants and balancing resources. We're going to have some base load, and we're going to have solar and wind helping us save fuel, and particularly solar meet demand during the middle of the day. And this is exactly what's reflected in the spending plans of companies like Xcel Energy. Just announced a combination of renewables, gas, energy storage, and expanded transmission lines. It's reflected in the finance community, where you have an article here. JP Morgan says, don't drop solar and wind. We're going to miss our energy goals if we do that. And in my review of the ongoing studies and literature in this field, all credible analysis and modeling concludes that solar and wind can play a key role in a team or a portfolio of technologies. Here's just one example of the pushback, even from the Republican side on this. Governor Cox of Utah recently publicly said we should not be squashing the nation's largest solar project under development. This is how we lose the AI arms race with China. So, what does a good team look like? I think Texas provides a good example. This is a snapshot of 8 days of the generation mix in Texas from last month, and showing the different team of technologies playing together. They have a slab of nuclear in green, providing steady baseload. They have a slab of coal plants with some ramping capability, but operating in fairly steady manner. They have a lot of solar and wind in yellow and green, with solar really contributing to the peaks in the middle of the day, and then gas plants compensating at night and evening as necessary, ramping up and down. We even have a little purple storage coming in, and probably expand in future years, helping to move abundant solar in the middle of the day into the evening hours. So this is how Texas is showing these technologies can work together, keep the lights on, and provide affordable power for Texas consumers and industry. The last thing I'm going to kind of do a deep dive on is something called integration costs, which is really important to understand how different plants can play together and how renewables can play a role without having to be backed up kilowatt for kilowatt with a firm or dispatchable source. This again is from an NREL study, and I think it has a lot of credibility. And what it's doing is showing qualitatively the degree of difficulty or cost on the y-axis, and on the x-axis showing what would happen as solar and wind get to be a larger and larger fraction of the generation mix. And although this is a qualitative graph, it is backed up by actual, concrete quantitative modeling examples from different grids. So what NREL describes as the integration costs is, in order for solar and wind to play a good role, they need to be tied in by an extensive transmission system. They need to be complemented by storage and DSM and load shifting. And when we start out at 0% or up to about, say, 20% where we are in the US and somewhat beyond, there's a short-term variability problem in solar and wind that's largely solved. We're solving it by just changing our dispatch on our gas plants, adding 4-hour batteries, and integration costs are low. As we move into sort of the second zone, where we're going to need more storage measured in many hours, along with other integration steps, and the difficulty and cost increase somewhat. And then if we get into the third zone, which is really driven by the seasonal problem, where wind and solar production can vary quite a bit between summer, winter, fall, etc. We really need long duration storage, which is not economical yet, and we must also address what I call the Dunkelflaute problem. But what this analysis implies is that solar and wind will need to be complemented by firm dispatchable resources, nuclear, fossil, advanced geothermal, hydro. At some point, they can never get to 100 without costs really escalating dramatically. Dunkelflaute is my favorite German word. I won't dwell on this. You can dig deeper if you wish, but it means that the dark doldrums in German, what in the US we call a solar and wind drought that can last for 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, very low production of solar and wind, and we need to have systems that are resilient and can still keep the lights on. I'll close by just giving you my vision of the pathway to a reliable, affordable, clean power grid. One metaphor is spread your chips, build that team, and have lots of options. We can build more solar and wind now. The integration costs are still low. We can build more transmission to tie it all together, batteries and DSM. We can keep our existing nuclear plants operating or even restart them, as you've seen in the press lately. We can create viable advanced nuclear options, carbon capture and storage options, advanced geothermal, really taking off in the West lately, along with long-term storage. All of this can be aided by intelligent federal RD&D programs, also aided by the purchasing of the Googles, Amazons, and Microsofts of the world, entering PPAs for geothermal, advanced nuclear, SMRs, and most recently, Google adding gas with CCS. So I have some links to dive deeper and some bonus slides, but I'll stop there. Back to you, Suzanne.
Great. Thank you so much, Karl. This was fantastic. And it's great to hear. Last on Tuesday, we did see the LCOE chart, and it's one way, to look at things, like you said, but it has to be balanced out with a number of different things. And we had a comment by Mayor Udall, who I think has joined us also today. And I don't know, Mayor Udall, if you would like to make your comment again, or you have any questions or comments from Karl's presentation. I just wanted to give you the first opportunity.
Well, sure. I'll try not to get too yappy. I felt like I got diarrhea of the mouth last time. But it's hard to balance because I felt like I'm kind of in the same boat as Mayor Mike, is not only a mayor of a town that is affected by coal, but also work at the local coal-fired generating station. Mm-hmm. And so part of my worry was when it comes down to reliability. And one thing, and maybe Karl can clear it up for me, because the one thing I either am missing or not seeing when we talk about renewables, I really appreciate him saying that there is more cost than what people are putting out there, but there seems to me, in my opinion, even more than that, because in the shadows of renewables, we still have to back it up with firm capacity. And so when we put these renewables on there, there's still another gas fire, coal fire, whatever, that is going into what you call it, Dunkelflaute or whatever, the doldrums.
Dunkelflaute, my favorite German word.
Because yes, we do have meteorologists. Yes, we have all this stuff to where we can make some predictions. We're pretty good at knowing when our peaks are and things like that. But if we expect these power companies to employ entire powerhouses just for certain times because we put too much renewables on the market, at some point it becomes to where it's not feasible for them economically to do that. My worry is, where is the tipping line between reliable and price and everything else? Because we know we can overpenetrate into the renewable market. California has proved it. The energy imbalance market has proved it. Every single day when California's rooftop solar goes off, you'd think it'd be a nice steady decline with a nice easy landing. It's really not like that. It goes off much faster than what you think. It puts the WEC into a little frequency excursion. Every day we see that because we're one of the balancing authorities in Arizona. So every day we deal with that. So I guess personally, I sure would like to see a lot more money get spent on the SMR side, but that's personal. And the other thing that I see with and putting a mayor hat on, the other thing I see problems with when it comes to renewables, we keep talking about these renewables, but where are they going to put it all? And increasingly, we've got to move out into these rural areas. And in our rural areas, we've always been okay to have a big, dirty coal-fired power plant here because it provided jobs to the people around here. It was a give and take thing. I mean, we're not dumb that to know that there's a giant stack there that's putting up uh, emissions into the air, but the jobs were worth it. But now what they're doing is they're coming up and saying, all right, we're going to take townships of land and we're going to put, 100 wind generators, or we're going to put a section of land of solar. And what we're seeing though is major pushback from communities saying, listen, what you're wanting us to give it's not enough for what we give up, and we are seeing these very vigorous grassroots um, movements to oppose any of this, and rightly so. And so I don't know where that is, because also if you want to be on the grid, if you want to use electricity, you got to accept a certain amount of stewardship to that and say, well, I like my electricity, so maybe I'll be all right with the wind generators. So I don't know where that, I'm going to lose 150 jobs right at the plant. In our plant, luckily, we're not closing down. We're going to convert to gas. We're going to lose some jobs, but we got some cool stuff happening here with the energy dome, things like that. But
it sounds,
it's a trade-off that's hard, and I don't know how to reconcile that.
Yeah, and I think it's different for every community depending on what they care about, So I think there are two major comments here or questions, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Karl, if you want to address the first one, and then the land use is a separate one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to give a quick response. Mayor Udall, you're asking all the right questions and putting your finger on things we really need to wrestle with. On the generation mix, it's going to depend very much on, how much penetration do you have in solar and wind now, and can you afford to? Is more solar and wind still a good idea or not? Where are you on that curve I put on the integration costs, at the low end or the high end? You mentioned California. I thought it was very interesting that a couple of years ago, California recognized that they need some firm dispatchable resources, and they ordered their utilities to procure, I think, a gigawatt of storage and long-term storage and a gigawatt of advanced geothermal. Over across the world in Australia, they're really pushing the limits on solar. Very sunny and not much Dunkelflaute there. That's very different than going to be from the northeast of the United States, where they don't have the solar potential, and they may be shifting to a winter peaking utility, and that peak is going to be at a time of the lowest solar output. So it's going to be very grid specific, and that's why people like you with balancing authority responsibility need to watch what happens to the integration costs. We know that if we tie the transmission together in a better way, and we get inventive with load shifting, we can move toward more intermittent, but there's going to be a limit where we're better moving to additional firm, very grid specific. I'll stop there.
Can you address just a little bit the one-to-one backup?
Yeah, I think there's some people who believe we need to completely back up every kilowatt of solar or wind with a kilowatt of gas or coal or nuclear. Actually, that's not correct. You need some firm dispatchable generation to support a certain penetration of solar and wind, but fortunately, it doesn't have to be one-to-one backup. And again, if we tie our transmission systems better, together, then you're aggregating solar and wind over a bigger geographic area, decreasing the probability that you'll have, big decreases in one area that can't be supported by others. And again, depending on how cheap storage gets, we can store hours now pretty easily. Form Energy just came out with an economic package that can get you 100 hours of storage. All those things help us avoid complete duplication of the power system, kilowatt for kilowatt, which of course would be extremely expensive. Fortunately, our power engineers are figuring out how to do that without one-to-one backup.
Okay, and I do want to also talk about the land and issue and siting. I want to hear from Andy as well, and he is, I think, going to talk about that at least a little bit, or show some slides about land use. There is one more question in the chat from Amanda, so maybe you can look at that, Karl, and we can get to that one at the end. And I will transition here to Dr. Walker. Dr. Andy Walker has been researching renewable energy technology and deployment for more than 40 years, with experience at the Solar Energy Research Institute, the Solar Energy Applications Lab, the Colorado Office of Energy Conservation, and he is currently a senior research fellow emeritus after 32 years at the National Renewable Energy Lab. He has a BS, an MS, and a PhD in mechanical engineering, and he's a fellow of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. He is also a registered professional engineer in Colorado and teaches a solar energy class at Colorado School of Mines in Golden, Colorado. So I will hand it over to you now, Andy.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thanks everybody for joining us. This academy will cover all kinds of topics, including geothermal and nuclear, but right now we'll just kind of take a closer look at variable renewable energy, solar and wind. So we'll talk in these slides about the resource, about the operating principle, about the schematic diagram, and an example. The wind energy resource is proportional to the wind speed cubed, so twice the wind speed means 8 times the wind energy. And it can be sorted into wind power classes, and the annual total can be shown on a map here. The best place for utility scale wind is in the wind basket of the High Plains, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas. The Rocky Mountains present a barrier to wind blowing from the west, but you can see some gaps in the continental divide, including southern Wyoming and New Mexico.
Someone took my thing, but Mike made me a sticker for it.
And then California is famous also for wind power development, but in passes like San Gorgonio Pass, Tehachapi Pass, Altamont Pass, breaks in the mountains where the wind pours through. So here in the Rocky Mountain area, it would be in those kind of pass areas. The operating principle is that the blades are an airfoil with lift and drag. The lift causes the rotor to rotate around. There's a gearbox and a generator. The generator is often variable speed, so hanging from the wind turbine or at the base of the tower would be some power conditioning equipment to turn that variable speed AC into grid compatible wind power frequency. And just a quick example of that is Cedar Creek, Colorado. 550 megawatts and 397 turbines. Here's a photograph of what a turbine typically looks like. Each pad, the outline of the site plan of a wind farm looks a little bit like kind of 1 acre ranchette type, driveways running up to the base of turbines. So there's roadways and pads around each turbine, but the land around it can be used for crops such as corn, shown in the left-hand side, and cattle, shown on the right-hand side. With regards to photovoltaics, the resource is measured in kilowatts per square meter per day of wind power resource. And in this area, the kilowatt hours per day varies from about 3 kilowatt hours per day on the shortest winter days to about 7 kilowatt hours per square meter on the sunny longest summer days, with an average of about 5 kilowatt hours per square meter. And photovoltaics, the nameplate rating is based on sunlight of 1 kilowatt per square meter. So you can think of that as hours per day. PV system would deliver about 3 hours per day of its rated output in winter, about 7 hours per day of its rated output in summer, and about 5 hours on an annual average. The operating principle is the PN junction. The most common used material is silicon, which has 4 valence electrons. If we add phosphorus, that has a 5th one, and also boron, which has only 3, then we can create a junction between positively charged and negatively charged side. And when the sunlight, silicon is a semiconductor, which means sometimes it conducts electricity and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it conducts electricity when the sunlight shines on it and creates an electric current. My point in diving into this level of detail is that it generates electricity with no fuel consumed and no wear and tear on the parts. They're very long-lived. They often have warranties of 20 or 25 years, even longer. And you can expect a degradation of about 0.5% per year in the PV modules themselves and about 1% per year on the plant as a whole. Little schematic diagram how show each one of those PN junctions produces about 0.6 volts. If I put 100 of them in series, I would have a 60 volt module. If I put 10 of those in series, I would have a 600 volt string. And 600 volt is the limit for rooftop applications, residential and commercial. But in a utility scale plant, you could go up to 1500 volts DC, and products are being developed for 2000 volts DC. And then that's DC, so an inverter converts that into alternating current compatible with the voltage and configuration of phases on the utility side. An example of a distributed plant here is this 308 kilowatt system on the rooftop of a hospital in California. With regards to how PV can fit into with agriculture, there are solar farms where crops are grown around the base of the PV module. Some crops do better in that level of shade, but often there's a reduction of 20%, 40% of what the agricultural output would have been without the photovoltaics. I'm really interested in the diagram shown on the right there with bifacial PV. So bifacial PV generates electricity with sunlight from either side. So it can be put in these vertical fence rows with room for equipment to manage crops in between them. And this kind of bifacial vertical configuration would generate most of its power in the morning and afternoon and have a flatter generation profile over the course of the day. Sheep can be grazed around PV modules. Sheep, because of their anatomy and physiology, they just like to keep their head down munching on the grass. Goats would jump on top of the modules, and other types of cattle could rub against the modules. In places where they graze cattle around the PV modules, they raise up the pole 10 or 12 feet off the ground, and of course that adds to the structural loads and costs. So Mayor Udall was, citing some of the challenges that occur when installing large amounts of variable renewable energy on a utility circuit. And they range all the way from the building level to the electrical system and the generating plant, and even beyond the generating plant to the business of operating a utility company. At the building level, we have the electrical interconnection issues and the impact on the utility bills. Solar and wind are good at delivering kilowatt hours, but they're not good at ensuring a demand peak is met, so that it affects the details of the utility bill. With regards to the electrical distribution system, the local line would have to have the capacity to receive extra power from a distributed generation application. The protection scheme, which is the location and setting of breakers. One thing, I'll digress just a second. Photovoltaic systems are not capable of delivering a short circuit current much higher than their normal operating current. So you have to think about how you detect if there's a fault because you won't have a huge current, much more than the typical operating current from a photovoltaic circuit. So voltage limits, reactive power. These are things that affect the local line to the distributed generation facility. And then back at the substation, we have to think about routing of power from circuits that have extra renewable energy generation to other circuits that can use that. A typical off-the-shelf radial substation bus configuration would do that, but a lot of substations have ring buses and network protectors that can prevent a backflow of electric power. So there might need to be changes to the configuration of the substation. A generating plant, I think as Mayor Udall was kind of getting to, a generating plant has to have enough spinning reserve to cover sudden fluctuations in the load and sudden fluctuations in the renewable energy resource at the same time. So significantly more spinning reserve at a power plant if there's a high penetration of variable renewable energy. And then the other topics also that Mayor Udall put his finger on is the ramp rates. How quickly can I ramp up a generator to meet a sudden decrease in the wind or solar resource? And a third parameter is how low can I turn down the conventional coal-fired generator when the wind or solar is at a maximum? There's usually a minimum turn down ratio, and we have to operate within all three of those limits. And then with regards to utility operations, how do we allocate costs associated with integrating renewable energy among utility customers, equitable distribution of the operating costs? For example, I have photovoltaics on the roof over my head, also on my garage, other features of the house, so that my house is a net energy exporter. And I really don't pay for the utility, but I use it every day. So other utility ratepayers are basically paying for the fact that I draw power from the utility every night, even though I put more on during the day. So that kind of equitable distribution of the cost of operating a utility among all the ratepayers, kind of a redistribution of the operating costs, so that people like me don't get free service from the utility company. And then at the investor level, the current model kind of guarantees a payback. A utility company could argue in front of their public utility commission that they need a rate increase to cover their investments in baseload coal or nuclear plants, and they can get a guarantee that they can buy power on the wholesale market. And that's kind of that model that the investors are going to get a guaranteed rate of return is challenged by this on-site generation. Wholesale prices are lowered by the renewable energy generation, so we'd have to think about some other way of utilities or plant operators, plant owners to recover their investment, such as charging for the reliability that a baseload power plant would provide in excess of the LCOE value of the energy itself. Let's see, why is my page down not working?
Maybe just try page to the right instead. Not working.
Huh.
There
Okay,
you go.
finally. So what are some solutions to these problems? One is inverters are getting much more advanced. They do more than just convert direct current into alternating current. They can also support frequency, support voltage, and they can also source reactive power to better match the utility system. And those same advanced inverter features can be used to curtail the excess variable renewable energy production. If the inverter senses that the grid doesn't need the power, it can curtail either automatically or in response to a signal from the system operator. That can be assisted by forecasting of both the variable renewable energy and also forecasting of what the load will be doing. Forecasting can be over minutes or hours or some of the longest forecasts go out to 6 months. And of course, at that point, it's just kind of a seasonal forecast, but it can still, at any time scale, forecast what both your variable renewable energy and load are going to be. And the silver bullet to a lot of the problems that have been brought up are electrical storage, and costs vary from like 200 to 1,000, but let me throw out about $400 per kilowatt hour as something seen in my experience. And so that's expensive. If I had a battery that costs $400 and I could cycle it 1,000 times, that would be 40 cents per kilowatt hour of throughput on the battery. And by extending the cycle life or getting the cost down, I might be able to get that out to 10 cents or 20 cents per kilowatt hour of battery throughput. But I want to make the impression that battery dispatch is expensive because of the wear and tear and replacement interval on the battery. So optimal dispatch of the battery is very important, given all the things that are going on right now, like the voltage and frequency on the grid and the price of wholesale power and the output of the solar and wind plant. What should I be doing right now? Should I be charging or discharging my battery? That's not an easy question to answer, so sophisticated software is required for optimal dispatch of the battery storage. If I spread my plants around a geographical area, it's less likely that all of them will be affected by a cloud covering a solar panel or a gust of wind hitting a wind plant. So geographical diversity and spreading things out over a distribution system helps. Utilize as much flexible conventional generation as we can. So gas turbines have better operating parameters in terms of ramp rate, minimum power threshold than coal-fired power plants. Increase sharing among balancing authorities, so extra power can be exported or deficiency can be imported, and that's going to require an expansion of transmission between distribution systems. And then finally, we like not to bother our customers, but coordinate flexible loads. Things like, maybe water treatment plants, maybe it's cheaper to store water than it is electricity. Irrigation pumps, maybe the crops don't really care what time of day they get water as long as they get water every day. So there are some loads which could be actively managed. Just think about it. If I could control a 1 megawatt irrigation pump, that has the same benefit to the system as if I could control a 1 megawatt battery. Demand response, super important. So energy storage, again, the silver bullet that can balance supply and demand, ease grid congestion. Like one of the first battery projects we were involved in was Borrego Springs, where the transmission line running to the community had been outgrown by the load growth. So one idea would be to charge a battery at night to serve the growing load during the day. Batteries can help integrate this variable renewable energy generation. Even 2 or 4 hours worth of battery storage that can help meet the evening peak. Batteries provide grid resilience and help with grid stability, and any kind of microgrid that includes renewable energy resources and conventional resources like diesel generators would also involve batteries. Different kinds of energy storage system, electrochemical batteries. They're available in any size, from very small to very large. The largest is almost 4 gigawatt hours now. Chemical energy storage, where the electrolyte and the reactants can be stored. The reactants can be stored in separate tanks and give that would avoid any self-discharge and give long-term energy storage. Gravitational potential, such as pumped hydro storage. Mechanical energy, such as flywheels, helps on a rapid time scale. Thermal energy has been incorporated into concentrating solar plants, but also conventional fossil fuel plants, molten salt with a heat engine to generate electricity from heat. And then we also have to think about non-electric storage, like if air conditioning is a big load in Arizona and New Mexico, we could store ice, or we could store chilled water, and such thermal storage is common in building air conditioning systems nowadays. And then we also have to think about decommissioning or at the end of the performance period. We have to have some criteria to evaluate when a system needs to be decommissioned. Maybe the contract has expired. Maybe there's been storm damage, um, or maybe the technology is just obsolete. At that point, there's several things that we could consider. We could extend the term of a power purchase agreement and just continue to limp along with high O&M costs and reduced performance. The tax situation usually requires that if a system changes hands, it has to be sold at fair market value. That's kind of a condition of getting the tax credits in the first place. We could refurbish a system and extend its life, like say a plant that we thought would last to 25 years, we might be able to extend its life to 40 years. Repowering is a term that refers to, in the case of PV modules, new PV modules and new inverter, and in the case of wind plant, new wind turbines, repowering with new components. And this can not only improve the output of the plant, but also take advantage of some of those advanced inverter features that I talked about earlier, which would support both solar and wind plants. Or we might have to remove the system and restore the site to its earlier condition. We want to recycle as much as possible as opposed to a landfill. Things in PV modules can be largely recycled, but it's a specialized process, and really the results of the recycling have to go back into the photovoltaic industry. And photovoltaic modules may contain hazardous materials, so we want to begin with the end in mind and specify equipment that avoids hazardous material in the photovoltaics.
Great.
Similarly, for wind turbines, the fiberglass blades and the cell, they can be crushed up or they can be reused, but the market for that is extremely limited. So chances are that the fiberglass parts will have to be disposed of in a landfill. The tower is steel, and the structure of the gearbox and things are steel, and that can be recycled at pretty much of a break-even cost. And then any aluminum or copper can be recycled at a salvage value. About 50% of the weight of a wind turbine is in the concrete foundation, and that's very difficult and expensive to remove. It could be removed and crushed into aggregate, which could be reused in concrete or road base. But oftentimes the concrete foundations are just buried under 5 feet of earth, which is deeper than most trenching utilities would require. And so I'll stop here. I don't know if I ran over time, Suzanne. I talked as fast as I could.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, and I will say that there used to be problems with and kind of when turbines have reached or solar plants have reached the end of their lives, and now there are rules in place that counties shouldn't have to deal with the cleanup. The owner of the project has to deal with the cleanup. So that is sometimes a question we get, but. Thank you so much. And we can take specific questions for Andy if people have them now, or we can also wait on that until the end. Thank you for showing the agrivoltaic slides. I put a little something about agrivoltaics also in the chat. I can't see all the hands, so I guess if somebody sees one, let me know. And I will go ahead and introduce Chris, and Andy, maybe you can stop sharing, and Chris, you can start while I'm introducing you. Thanks again. So Chris Pasterz brings a powerful blend of executive leadership, financial expertise, and hands-on community development to his role serving as a member of NREL AZ, which is Northeastern Arizona's economic development engine. And if you haven't been to Navajo County and Apache County to visit Chris, I highly recommend it. It is a beautiful part of our country. With a career spanning multinational business operations, small business ownership, local government, senior operational roles, and nonprofit leadership, Chris has led transformative economic development initiatives that expand opportunity across rural northern Arizona. And his work really strengthens the region's economic transition by attracting advanced manufacturing, which hopefully we'll hear a little bit about, and other energy projects into the region, growing the collaborative networks that connect capital, workforce, and innovation. And as the executive director of Real AZ and an active member of multiple regional and national economic development coalitions, he continues to drive strategies that promote resilience as sustainable growth in Navajo and Apache County. So I will hand it over to you now, Chris. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for everyone for your time today. I was told a quick game is a good game, so I'm going to move through this quickly. But I think in summary of that intro is really we are the doers and we are seeing the effects. So I live in an energy community. I raise a family here. And when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about coal-powered energy, gas-powered energy, biomass energy, solar, wind, and battery. And so all of that is concentrating in our region, and we're seeing unprecedented investment into our area. Those growing pains are hard to deal with at times, but oftentimes growing pains are better than the death groans. So I say that we're Arizona's energy corridor, and I can't just say that without proving it. But we are seeing all of this happen here, right? This is impacting on all of our residents, and our industry is trying to adjust to it. But when I say that we're the corridor, just to kind of share a little bit of context, we've got 3 completed wind projects in Navajo County. We have a solar and battery project in construction right now. These are utility level, 500 megawatts, 450 megawatts. There's 3 solar and battery projects that are in the pre-construction phase right now. We've got a couple wind and battery projects that are in the pre-construction phase. This map here, actually, this just shows the projects that are in Navajo County, not the entire Real AZ region, which is Navajo and Apache County. But you can see here that there's 14 projects that have applied for special use permits, and they're all concentrated in an area. And I think, it's hard to see, but we've got this mapping available for folks. So if you ever want to take a closer look about what's going on here, I'd be happy to introduce that mapping to you. But when we look across the wider region of Real AZ, there is nearly 40 projects that are energy related happening in Northeast Arizona. So that's why I say that we're Arizona's energy corridor, right? But how did we get to this point where we're seeing this expansion? And really, this is for all of I see many of my Real AZ members. Thank you, Spencer Udall, Mayor Udall. I see some Apache County folks as well. But when we're looking at how we got here, there is a series of steps that I think are very important to protecting the land, protecting the communities, but as well as respecting the rights of private landowners, respecting the business rights that we hold true here in the United States. But the way that Navajo County did this, and this was a years-long process, is having a comprehensive plan for the entire area of Navajo County is a step that can't be sped up. This took us nearly 18 months to go through stakeholder feedback, identify future uses of land, look at the jurisdictions that are within the areas, getting the different jurisdictions feedback as well as the residents. And so they created that comprehensive plan. And so that's the overarching. Then within that, in Navajo County, was an area plan. So I have that as number 2. An area plan is kind of a specific corridor of what are some compatible uses for land. And now when we're talking about this, we're not talking about the tribal lands. That's not within the county's jurisdiction. We are not talking about the state lands or the federal lands. We're talking about the unincorporated private lands within a county. This area-wide plan is kind of nests into that comprehensive plan, and that's what's established what some of those uses are for the land. And then going down from that, we drove in to the details and the ordinances. Those are the local laws that allow development of energy projects. What are the rules? What are the regulations, the must-haves, the non-optionable pieces that need to be there? But that development pathway is what has been the key to creating this this continued energy production in our region. So one of the things that we've been doing, and I'm not going to go into this in major details, but we've been coordinating this. As I said, 40 different projects, many different jurisdictions. Coordinating that is something that economic developers have been struggling with. But because we are a regional economic development group and we're closely connected, we're able to pull this information together and centralize it so we can make informed decisions, partnerships with landowners, what's happening with the utility demand, what's happening in the renewable energy industry, right? All those pieces kind of come together. And so I'd be happy to share with this tool that we've done that brings all of this together. We have the development ordinances for Navajo and Apache County. We've got maps. We've got all the different pieces. So if people want to dive deep, they can. Energy is a precursor for economic development. Producing our own energy, as we heard from Karl in the beginning, these data centers are changing the face of our planet. This is not something that we can turn our heads away from, because it is with us to stay. The supremacy of the United States is dependent on this semiconductor, this AI, these data centers. Right now, we've got 12 different data centers that have converged on us. Why? Because they have a pathway to produce power. They have come to this area. They need a couple things. They need power, they need water, they like private land, but they also need fiber internet connectivity. And so that's one of the things that is that infrastructure. Yes, there's transmission lines. Yes, there is middle mile broadband available. So we've got these data centers that are coming to these places. But this in itself, because data centers are a little bit different, they are the users. They want to just produce and use. They don't want to transmit it onto the lines. But in attempting to manage these data centers, we're also working in the same way of making sure that our ordinances are in line with what is compatible for our communities, but also realizing that, yes, private property rights do matter. And also, when you're talking about utilization of resources on those private properties, those impacts are mitigated for and measured for and offset by community benefits. And so those are the challenges that we're wrestling with. I'm going to turn over my time to the group for questions, but I wanted to share my phone number. This is my cell phone number, my email address. So if you'd ever like to dive deeper and kind of start to unpick what's happening in these areas and kind of get some of our learnings in detail, I welcome you to reach out. My name's Chris Pasterz, and thank you for letting me engage with this group, but I'll defer to the rest of you my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That is great. And Chris has really been there for his community through lots of different developers coming in, and wanting to get approvals and various permits, whether that's, data centers or solar or batteries, whoever it is. So if you have questions about developers coming in and what you should talk to them about and how you can make sure that no matter what kind of developer it is, you do get community benefits out of that, Chris is a really great person to talk with about that. So folks can feel free to come off mute and ask questions. I know we have one in the chat from Amanda that I want to get back to. And she asked, and this was Karl, when you were talking about the LCOE chart, I think Amanda said in recent Arizona utility competitive RFPs, solar paired with battery storage have been purchased more than other resources due to their cost competitiveness. And so how does this square with what you said about LCOE?
Great question, Amanda, and actually a great illustration of how the LCOE formula works and how it can throw light on what's a good addition to a system under particular circumstances. When you add storage to, let's say, a solar plant, the capital cost goes up. The total output, the total megawatt hours of that plant stays the same. It's the same, obviously the same solar output. So you get a bigger cost number divided by the same megawatt hours. The LCOE of the solar and battery goes up. It's higher than the solar plant alone. It's like, is that bad? No, that could be very good because the megawatt hours in that denominator now become more valuable. The utility can shift the production of the solar plant around somewhat, maybe 4 hours worth, 4-hour battery to evening hours or to some other place where it needs it. And so it's a great illustration of how just low LCOE is not, is not the holy grail. Solar with batteries, typically, I was looking at some numbers in the interim. It often adds like 50% to the LCOE of a standalone solar plant. But that may be a good deal because the megawatt hours are more valuable. And I think the illustration you said in Arizona, it is finding a good competitive niche and winning out over solar alone. And maybe it's beating new gas plants. Not sure of the context there.
Yeah, and I think part of my point is the point you made is that we've got all these new metrics that utilities are starting to use to figure out what's the cost of something, and you have to look at multiple metrics, and you have to be able to compare in multiple ways because some cost metrics don't take into account gas costs or fuel costs, some do. And so I think it's just hard to look at one measure and then be able to get a determination about what's best.
Yeah. I'll make one more comment building on what someone said earlier about the backup in the orders for new gas combined cycle plants. If GE Verona is literally just booked for 4 years, 5 years, you can't get a gas combined cycle plant. That's a constraint. And in a perfect world, maybe you want a natural gas combined cycle plant. But if you need power in 2 years, a solar with battery storage might be your best option in the constrained environment. So again, a simple cost number never tells the whole story. You'll have to look at supply chain, order books, impacts on system cost. But LCOE can be, and I didn't say this in my presentation, it can be a good initial screening tool. Where do we start? What should we think about? But it's not the end of the story.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you.
Okay, I'm seeing that Mayor Udall has his hand raised. Go ahead, Mayor.
I don't want to take, if there's other people that want to ask a question, I dang sure would like them to do it. But, in 1978, when the power plant came in, my town, speaking from the mayor's hat, they didn't ask for anything. They didn't ask, that we were happy to have the jobs. The jobs were enough. And it's a pretty good trade-off, honestly. However, with the renewables come in, there essentially aren't any jobs comparatively. You go from 150 full-time employees and many contractors to a dozen jobs, maybe 20 jobs, something like that. That's a hard pill to swallow. And then to add to that, we don't even get to use the power that is made here. And I'm not in any way down in our local co-op. They're great. But I've wondered if there's ever been any talk of doing something for these rural communities, there might be more acceptance of letting these big projects come in if the people that actually consume the power would help these communities out. I don't know if anybody's ever talked about anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know we've got folks, and there was somebody on. We've worked in the Rocky Mountain West a lot. There are a lot of people in Wyoming who export their coal power all over the country. And so I think whether you're exporting solar or coal or gas or, you know, whatever it is, a lot of times also communities have an issue with if there's a transmission line, right, that's going to be built through their community. Well, usually the power is not necessarily going to go to their community. It's going to go through their community, but they still have to deal with the transmission lines. So I think there are lots of conversations about that, and it's definitely something people bring up, and it's worth talking about. And Karl, I noticed you. I can at least see your picture, so maybe you started to say something there. If you have something. No. Okay. All right. If anyone else wants to jump in.
Well, Chris has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Mayor Udall, thank you for the direct question. And I think one of the answers to how do we ensure that the locals benefit really comes down, and there's nuances within the ordinances in Navajo County. There is an expectation that community benefits, i.e. those that are consuming the power, right, are contributing to the benefits to the direct community. We are using a mechanism in Navajo County that looks like a development agreement process, which is actually a legal document that says, hey, we understand as a power provider that this is a burden on a community. We would like to contribute X, Y, and Z at these amounts over the lifetime to the local government for investment back into the community, so there is tangible benefit. So, Mayor, this is a powerful tool that has not been utilized as much as it should have been, but now with the updated ordinances in Navajo County, there is an expectation that that will be clearly defined and enforceable, rather than, you know, our intention is, and maybe no follow through. No, our intention is, and this is the contract, right, through the development agreement. So that's a really important tool for ensuring local benefit, regardless of who buys the power, right? If it's being produced here, there should be some local benefit. So thank you, Spencer Udall, Mayor. I hope that's helpful.
Can I add on to that? Oh,
Yep.
Mayor, can I add on to that? So,
sure, absolutely.
the work that Chris has done, ASU has been supporting a little bit, and I think that it absolutely is the right thing. There's development coming. What's the community going to get? You're absolutely right. They're not going to get jobs like you've had with the power plant. So what else should these developments be providing? You're going to get a natural gas pipeline that's going to come into the region to feed 3 power plants. What is that pipeline company, right? So this is not the electric utilities that's building it. It's the pipeline companies. What is that pipeline company going to provide? And at Chris's Real Easy meeting last week, Chris, maybe, I was talking with some of the communities up there about starting to have a conversation about what should the pipeline companies be able to provide, because, you know, this is billions of dollars of infrastructure that will be there for the next, 80 years. Your community should be getting some significant financial benefits from that pipeline. Thanks for letting me.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Amanda. And the gas won't all go to your community, right? It's going to go elsewhere too. There might be some, going to your local co-ops or communities, but just like the coal, it will go elsewhere as well. So, yeah.
I would also add that I have a little different. I mean, like I mentioned, that we have a very strong grassroots movements against the renewables, but we also have a ton of government-owned land. I think it's just a matter of time before they come and put wind generators and solar on the land that they already own. And I'm concerned that we don't take advantage of the bargaining in the front end, because we've dug our heels in so hard, kind of like when in the forest industry, where we dug our heels in and said, nope, we're not going to do anything. And they never went to the bargaining table, and they just killed an entire industry. They just did it. I have a feeling this is going to be the same thing. But anyway, that's more of a worry comment.
Preston has his hand up.
Hey, Preston.
Sorry, guys.
Nice to see you.
How are you? I can't find the little raise your hand button like you cool guys are using, so apologize for that. But I want to add on to what Chris was saying and with Mayor Udall. Any of these energy companies worth their salt understand that there is going to be a community benefits negotiation, and they're going to come in and they know that this is kind of a par for the course, but they're not going to broadcast that to us. We need to understand that, hey, this is something that we need to work out with these guys. One of them in general, when Chris and I were talking to them a long time ago, even members of their staff were like, wait, well, we don't do that. And the other one's like, yeah, we do. I don't know if Chris, I don't know if you remember that, but the other guys are like, well, and she's like, no, we totally do things like that. And so I think if we as the individuals that will be trying to work with these companies are savvy in our negotiations with these guys and come in with really good, powerful asks that are amiable between both parties, this can be a huge plus for those of us if we get in front of this in the beginning.
Yeah. Same with for data centers, right? It's the same thing. It's like whatever development comes, right? And whether that is what they're producing is going to go exactly to your community, or maybe it's a manufacturing plant and stuff's going to be sent out, right? Yep. I think that's really true. I can't see everyone, so I can't tell if there are other hands up. I know Pam, yours was up, but.
Yeah, but I was going to ask about similarly, then there's I don't know how these affect the tax base, and just thinking about, what are the overall benefits of these projects. But you talked a lot about how you work with the developers and try to strengthen the benefits that come into the community. So you sort of address the questions that I had. So.
And is there a way, Chris, I know you and I have talked about a lot of different types of developers coming to your community and different community benefits. And if people are a little skeptical, no matter what it is, it's solar or batteries or, AI or whatever, like what is a way that you can kind of look at with your team? You can look there and say, all right, how is this going to pencil out for my community or not?
Suzanne, so this is where we start to dive into the details of the development agreement. But one of the first steps into getting to that developer agreement, as Preston was mentioning, these companies, these developers are used to playing this game, and it is a negotiation game. What happens is when you get to the development agreement, the project developers disappear, the economic developer partners disappear, and the lawyers take the center stage, and they start talking in legal language because this is a legally binding document. So there is a process that you're engaging with that is sometimes new to rural communities. So strengthening that bench from the local government perspective, having the law firm representing you and only you at these negotiations is critical. And it is an investment in your future, but it is critical not to think that it's going to be a Preston or a supervisor or a Chris that's doing this negotiation. No, you have to have that critical bench strength on your team as a local jurisdiction. And I think when it kind of comes down to it is, because we are talking about a legally binding document that that has expectations for community benefit, there has to also be defensible and justifiable community burden defined with amounts, because that is what puts the communities in a position to say, no, we are not asking for the moon. We are asking for these burdens that we've defined and identified to be offset with this community benefits package that is explained in the development agreement. So that, I think, is probably the best way to sum it up. So I would welcome any of those groups that want to understand more of the details within that mini process. Be happy to share.
Thank you. And on your team of people that you count on, like for the county, you would work with the mayors and the leadership in the other towns, and then you'd also work with you're in economic development, so it'd be the economic development folks, it would be the county assessors, it would be the other local leadership, and then do you also communicate with like other counties or the state?
What's interesting for this group is you're actually getting to hear what's happening in a region as well as a county. But usually what happens is these things are done within the local jurisdiction and they are never communicated out wider to their neighbors, to the state, to a larger body. I think so. So you're getting a really interesting perspective with the experiences that we're going through here in the Real AZ region. But really, when it comes down to it, is if you are connected in with a group, then you will know. But if you're not connected in, you need to know who do you need to connect with. You can always connect with us here at Real AZ. We're a member organization, and we share and support each other. We share that information that is relevant to each other. So if you're in, New Mexico or any other state, find who it is that is in the middle of it and connect with them, because that is the only way that you will get the information that helps you to prepare and do right-sized, balanced, sustainable development in your region.
Yep. Okay. Great. All right. Any other questions or comments from folks?
I got one more.
Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Great.
Gosh dang. I would love to hear somebody give a good, honest answer, and either Karl or Andy will probably know, where are we actually at with batteries? Because in the power industry, we like to joke with a lithium ion battery, they're only good for 4 hours unless they catch on fire. Then if we put a boiler on top of them, we get 60 days of use.
I haven't heard that one.
but as a mayor and having really big transmission lines, I mean, I would look at the opportunity of putting some city battery storage if you could get some kind of crazy grant somewhere, if batteries were actually feasible. And maybe they are. I mean, I know you don't know by looking, but I just got my engineering degree by YouTube last night, and so I'm pretty up on everything,
Oh, congratulations.
No, I'm just YouTube. I'm only as smart as Google allows me. But no, I'd really like to know, where are we at really with batteries?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll take a first go and say I have a whole bunch of energy study projections that should probably be burned. If you have a battery fire, I can keep it going maybe 120 days with all sorts of forecasts that turned out to be wrong. But seriously, the 4-hour lithium batteries, it has been a real success story in terms of certainly the price coming down, and as Amanda noted, they are finding good niches to play in, particularly moving solar generation during the day into the evening hours. And California and Texas are both doing that in a big way. Other states are following. The one technologies I've been following closely, although I'm not an expert in all storage applications, is a company called Form Energy, which apparently is beginning to build a commercial niche with I believe it's an iron air battery that I think can store up to 100 hours. And there are also technologies under development that again could go further than that. So they're not full, again, lithium fully commercial might see again some further cost decreases, but not the dramatic ones we've seen over the last five years. Storage is going to be one of the tools in the toolkit for sure. I don't know.
I would just, in answer to the question, where are we at with batteries? I think we're at or near some kind of transition point where, before they were not cost effective in terms of battery lifetime and replacement. And now going forward into the future, I think they are becoming more cost effective in more applications. And something similar to be said for safety. I think in the past, we had a lot of safety concerns, and now going forward, I think a lot of those safety concerns will be mitigated by improvements to the technology and also improvements to the deployment, like how, for example, in the bad old days, you might find a battery storage plant inside a warehouse. And now, we know it needs to be not inside an occupied building or where other things are stored, and also separation between the storage units to minimize the probable loss if there were a fire. And just the incidence of fires and the consequences of fires have improved with battery technology.
I just wanted to add briefly, one of the things that's so interesting about batteries is you can do energy in out, which is primarily what's being done, but they kind of consider it the Swiss Army knife because batteries can provide voltage support. Batteries can provide a whole variety of services. Part of the challenge sometimes about paying for batteries is that the services like voltage support are not paid for by utilities. And so, there's a whole economic picture in there. But when we look at the wide range of things that they can be used for, it's not just energy storage. Some people are putting batteries on the system because they can arbitrage. They can just purely make money, put that energy in when it's cheap, take energy out when it's expensive. So, I think it really is something to keep our eyes on because I think I said, when I presented, it's a game changer because when you can store renewables, makes things different. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And Chris, there is storage near you, right, on the ground? Solar and storage?
And I have talked
you're
to
on
wind
mute, Chris.
developers who are
Sorry.
putting batteries on their wind projects just because it gives them better pricing and it makes them actually more competitive. So
Yeah. And we didn't hear you, Chris, because you're on mute, but I was just asking you. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, there is solar battery storage, but what we are also seeing is that the battery is also being attached to the wind generators as well. So both.
And we saw on the graph that Karl showed where, with the lines kind of up and down, and there was that bright yellow, right, for solar, and then there was a little bit of a purple for, and that's storage. And so when, like you said, when the sun goes down, it happens really quickly, right? Because the sun is just gone. And so then we don't have any more electricity from sun. But if we can have 4 hours of battery storage at 5:30 or whatever it is when the sun goes down, that's great to turn on our, whatever, use I don't know when you do your laundry, but, cook dinner, do the laundry, all those things, get home. Yep. So that's good. Well, thank you, everybody. I want to make sure that we end on time here, but a big thank you to our speakers today very much. This was really great. And thank you to the rest of you who engaged and listened. And we will see you all on Tuesday, December 2nd for more discussions. Those will be focused on nuclear and on geothermal and what's happening in this region of the country. So feel free to come ready with questions about those. And for now, have a very happy Thanksgiving next week. And thanks again. We'll see you later.
Thanks all.